You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio. Please share us with your friends. Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. On the program today, we have Bob Hoban as our guest. He'll be joining Al Byrne and Al Graham, the two joint hosts on the big broadcast, and myself to discuss all the things that he's been doing lately and what he plans to be doing soon to help make this fantastic plant legal all around the world. And those of you who don't know Bob's work, well, you're in luck. Our Time for Hemp new correspondents of Mr. Bud Stoner and Miss Anita Morhai have put together a short little introduction on Robert, and they worked really hard on it, and it was produced by Albie Inman, and the three of them put together a presentation on Bob's life and the things that he's been focused on to achieve in the near future with other governments around the world. So I think you'll find the introduction put together by Bud and Anita to be interesting. It's a short little thing at the top of the hour. And then after that plays, we'll be having Robert come on. And at the end of the broadcast, we got a surprise. Pato Banton will be doing a song called Legalize It. His voice is spectacular, and I think you'll like the tune. And you can find more of his work on YouTube and on iHeartRadio, which, by the way, we are now on iHeartRadio, and we're on iTunes, and we're on Spotify, as well as BitChute and Rumble and YouTube. We're trying to make it easy for this content to be found because that's the only way it's going to be heard. And the more people hear about it, the more people will understand all the wonderful things this plant can do and just how important it really is to take time for hemp.
All right. Let's jump into another deep dive.
Sounds good.
This time we're looking at Bob Hoban.
Okay.
And, just from the intro material that we've got here, looks like this guy has been everywhere and done just about everything in cannabis.
Yeah, he seems to have quite the resume.
Yeah, so we're going off some excerpts from his website here.
Okay.
And he's advised over 30 countries on cannabis policy.
Wow.
He's been involved in leading businesses, all sorts of things.
Yeah, it looks like he's been a busy guy.
Yeah, so today, I think the question is,
Yeah.
what is it about Bob Hoban that makes him such a,
A key player.
a key player in this industry?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the question we need to answer.
For sure, for sure.
So, one thing that really jumps out to me from looking at this material is just how much he emphasizes relationships and networks.
Yeah, and that's something that we've seen in a lot of these deep dives.
Exactly.
Is that, these people who end up at the top of these different industries.
They're the ones who can connect with people.
It seems like they know everybody.
Yeah, and it's not just about knowing people. It's about having those really strong relationships.
Right, and there was a quote here that really jumped out.
Okay.
It says, Bob Hoban sits at the nexus of the world's largest commercial cannabis industry network.
Yeah.
In part due to the tremendous value he places in relationships.
And I can definitely see that in everything we're reading about him.
Yeah.
So why do you think networks are so important in this industry specifically?
I mean, if you think about it, cannabis is such a new industry in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
There's still so much uncertainty with laws and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
The science is still evolving so rapidly.
All the time.
It seems like having that network could give you a huge advantage.
It's like a shortcut to getting things done.
Right.
So imagine you're Bob Hoban and you need to close a deal in a new country.
Okay.
Let's say Germany.
Okay.
Instead of starting from scratch.
Right. He can just call up his friend who's a top lawyer in Germany.
Right. And get all the insights he needs.
Exactly.
Local knowledge, regulatory updates.
It's got to be invaluable.
Totally.
And it's interesting, looking at his career trajectory, it seems like he really evolved along with the industry itself.
That's a good point.
Like he started out creating this whole field of cannabis attorneys.
Right.
But now it seems like he's transitioned more into this global deal maker role.
Yeah, it makes sense when you think about the skills you need for both.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, you need that attention to detail, that focus on the letter of the law.
Right.
But as a deal maker, you have to be able to see the big picture, understand markets, assess risk.
You got to bring people together.
Exactly.
And negotiate.
It's a whole different skill set.
Yeah. And so it seems like he's not just a lawyer who happens to know about cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
He's become a true expert in the whole industry.
That's right. It says here that he's above all else a cannabis industry expert.
And so that's kind of what I was wondering. I mean, what does that even mean?
That's a good question.
To be a cannabis expert in this kind of constantly changing landscape.
It's not just about knowing the plant itself.
Right.
It's about understanding everything from cultivation and processing to retail marketing, the social impact.
It's so multifaceted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to be able to connect the dots between all those different areas.
And it seems like with his legal background, that probably gave him a good foundation.
For sure.
But to stay on top of everything,
right,
to be a real expert, you have to be constantly learning and adapting.
Absolutely. Anticipating trends, staying ahead of the curve.
And it seems like he's really trying to do that with his podcast, The Hoban Minute.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's, he's trying to provide this global perspective on the cannabis market.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, what do you think about the impact that a podcast can have on an industry like this?
I mean, podcasts are huge these days. It's such a direct way to share your ideas and reach a specific audience.
Right.
And, you've got investors, entrepreneurs, even policymakers tuning in to hear what Bob Hoban has to say.
It's a way to shape the conversation.
Yeah.
To influence people's thinking.
And it seems like people really respect his insights.
Yeah.
I mean, his website is full of these glowing testimonials, people praising his expertise, talking about his leadership in cannabis policy.
I mean, testimonials like that.
Right.
They're so powerful, especially in an industry that's still facing, stigma and legal challenges.
For sure.
When you have respected figures vouching for you, it builds credibility.
Right. It shows that you're someone worth listening to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it seems like we've got this picture of Bob Hoban as a legal pioneer, global deal maker.
Right.
Someone who's deeply embedded in this world of cannabis.
And not just embedded,
yeah,
actively shaping it.
Yeah. And it all comes back to relationships.
That seems to be the key. Yeah, he recognized early on that collaboration is crucial in this industry.
Makes sense.
So I guess the question for our listeners is,
right,
do you think the future of cannabis is going to be more about companies working together?
Interesting.
Or competing against each other?
That is a good question.
Something to think about.
It'll be interesting to see how things play out.
For sure. And if you're interested in hearing more from Bob Hoban himself,
definitely,
I recommend checking out his podcast, The Hoban Minute.
Good idea.
All right. Well, until next time, keep diving.
See you then.
Bye.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. I don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. On the program today, I got my joint host with me and my technical supervisors with me, and we're going to be introducing you to a really hardworking lawyer here in the global marijuana movement, global cannabis movement, global hemp movement, depending on what terminology you decide to use. We want to make it a point to ask you to please hit the like button and subscribe button. Share us with your friends. That's how we're found. And anytime you hear the word joint on the Big Joint broadcast, make it a point to hit your pipes, your bongs, and your vaporizers and take time for hemp. On the program today, my joint host and I, Al Byrne. Say hi, Al.
Hello. Hi. Yes, joint host Al Byrne. We're here like we try to be about every week with either a new interview or a wonderful archive, something we've done in the past that somebody that has educated us well, we bring back to life. Today we have a live interview. A good cannabis guy, all-around cannabis guy who hangs out in Colorado. But in order to introduce him, I'll turn you over to my other co-host, Al Graham, our token Canadian.
There you go.
Our token Canadian. And
yeah, we're token all right.
he's not a co-host. He's a joint host.
Joint host. So yes, like the two of you, I look forward to our interview today. Our guest, Bob Hoban, he's worked with over 35 governments worldwide when it comes to developing cannabis policies and regulations with the, around the commercialization of cannabis as well as hemp.
So he must have a pretty strong brain and be able to think a lot if he's done all that work. Jeepers.
Well, 35 countries. That's getting to know a lot of laws, because obviously a lot of different laws are different in different countries. And he's dealt with places such as Uruguay and Costa Rica and Chile, Colombia, just to name a few.
And he's a lawyer.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll let him tell you what he is.
Yeah, let's bring him on and let him tell us all about himself.
All right.
I some lawyers I like, and some I'm kind of suspicious with. Why don't we bring him on and find out what kind of guy he is?
Let's see who this guy is. Yeah.
All right. We'd like to welcome Bob Hoban to the Time for Hemp. How you doing, Bob?
I'm doing great, guys. It's good to see y'all, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be connected. We were talking right before we started recording, and I'm in Colorado, and it's bright and sunny, but it's still cold here. So I'm jealous of anybody that's in warm weather right now.
That's you, Al.
Well, he should be. I agree. Right off, we're off to a good start.
Yeah, we're like minus 20 here, feeling like minus 30. So.
As we go on, before I forget, Al Graham's going to pick out some high points of your career here, but I want you to help me with Belize. I heard Costa Rica. I got a Belize story, so I'd like to hear what is going on down there. Okay.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So yeah, I started practicing law, graduated from law school, originally from Jersey. Worked for the U.S. government in what was the World Trade Center after graduating from college. Moved out to the West because I'm a mountain climber and a big outdoor person. I wanted to explore the Wind River Range, so I went to school in Wyoming, of all places. Before that, worked for the government in Casper, Wyoming, for a little bit. And Casper, yep, yeah, there you go. That's worthy. And at the end of the day, I went to law school and started practicing law as a commercial litigator. And then my mom got really sick with pancreatic cancer. I was able to sort of help navigate that process for her. No stranger to cannabis myself, but my mom wouldn't literally smoke something to save her life. So we had to figure some things out. And these were the days before dispensaries. So there was a law in Colorado at that point in time that allowed for caregivers. And, finding something that you didn't have to smoke before dispensaries was a little bit challenging. And don't get me wrong, I've been down the road of making cookies and brownies. We've all done that, but that was not exactly the experience that I wanted to give my mom and her first chance, trying to educate her and persuade her that this was medicinal, not just a diversion from, how she felt. In the context of doing so, I was able to meet a bunch of really kind folks, caregivers in Colorado that made cookies, crackers, metered out gummies, and all the precursors to the stuff we see in the marketplace today.
Dosing, actual set dosing.
Well, we back in the day there weren't set doses.
Not in the early days, no.
We put we put this much green butter in it, right? So then you had to basically meter it out yourself. So I said, Mom, we're gonna work this together. So I'd go over there and we'd take for example, a Tootsie Roll, big old Tootsie Roll that was made with green butter, and we'd shave them credit card size slices. Eat it, wait 20 minutes, see if it feels something. And then kind of got it down to a little bit of a routine. I'm proud to say that she lived for about 3.5 years, past her 6-month to live diagnosis.
Way to go.
Better part of that 3 years with no opiates. So that was good. And as I met a lot of folks that worked in the caregiver space at the time, they said, well, you're a lawyer, right? And I said, yeah. So we started to figure out how to navigate the existing law, which was in our Colorado Constitution, and helped open up the first dispensaries here. And over time, build up a big old law firm over the country and around the world, and opened up dispensaries all over the world. Did policy advice all over the world, started the CBD sector. I did a lot of stuff in my career, but at the end of the day, I'm sitting here today. I stopped practicing law back in March of last year. So I'm retired as a lawyer, and I get to play in this industry that I helped create over the last, 15, 16 years. And I'm having a blast, and most of it's international.
You sound like you're having a blast. Really, you do.
Now that's interesting too, because I call myself a reluctant activist, because I wasn't looking to do this for a living, for a lifetime, and I bumped into Jack Hare, and he put me in charge of his office. And the next thing you know, I'm 30 years down the road doing this. When did you realize, what was it that made you just go, I really got to give my life to this. I've got to stop doing everything else. This is what I have to do. I've got to work on legalizing cannabis. When was that for you?
I think part of it was I feel like my mom, in a way, that was sort of the impetus to do something with this, right? I was always my personal philosophy is, yes, legalize it, free the plant, so forth and so on. But I was never the activist guy. I was never out there at rallies and things like that. I was, personal consumption. That's always been my game. At the end of the day, it was kind of, I just saw an opportunity. I saw an opportunity because, I was a commercial lawyer. And what I saw was a bunch of criminal lawyers jumping into the different states in their regulated dispensary systems. And that's kind of, it doesn't really work. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with criminal defense lawyers. They're hardworking. I know some great ones. If I get in trouble or who I refer people to, I would go to them every single time. But they don't necessarily have the background and the skills to do what needed to be done when this became an industry. And, I always like to say that, what happened when a movement became an industry? Well, we see what happened. It's what happened over the last 15, 16 years. It changed everything. And it doesn't make a lot of people happy, but they needed guys like me that had experience to write contracts and to build businesses, not just keep people out of jail. You needed both. But
if I may, Bob, I agree completely. And I got my own history with criminal defense lawyers. It's not pleasant. The thing that you brought to the table was very important. Commercialization of the product and doing it in some regulated fashion. But that also changed perception. I had a trouble at the beginning. The TV shows would always show some stoned out hippie doing something stupid. And I was working with people like you and your mother. And that was not what we're putting across. And I tried to explain this to the lawyers at Normal, for instance, drug defense guys, as you say, some excellent human beings. But it was just them showing up it's got to be a crime if the criminal guy shows up. You showed up. Now, wait a minute. You had a different image. You had a different story. I applaud what you're doing. You were the kind of guys that when I started, I hoped would come up. And boy, you have. Please, I hate to interrupt you, but that's a compliment. I really think it's a big deal what you're doing.
I appreciate all that. And, I'm part of that too, is I saw that, right? And then this was, 15, 16 years ago, I started to see cannabis conference here, cannabis conference there. And it wasn't just, let's go and all hang out and smoke. Yes, that was what we did. But the purpose of it was to talk about, hey, here's where you buy your lights. And you could sell your lights because you were selling them to a commercial enterprise. My point was there were all the different parts of the business that were coming together. And so I started going to those conferences and meeting people that wanted to open dispensaries, that had dispensaries that needed good counsel. And I met other lawyers in every city. And then something clicked one day on a plane. And I said, man, I know great people who are commercial grade lawyers who love the plant and really want to see this industry thrive. And I know them in every state. I said, why don't I tie it all together and build a firm around that? And so I did, and read some books and papers on how to create a national law firm without a lot of money as overhead. And we built a system out, and frankly, based on that system, not that I invented it by any stretch of the imagination, but that's a system that a lot of these big firms use today, where you don't have to hire everybody. You keep them on an independent contractor, an of counsel status, and then you can build out that firm and sort of be the conduit and then share fees across state lines. So that's what we built. And the Hoban Law Group became the first of its kind. We were in 17 different states. We were in 10 different countries when I sold it in 2021 to a big international firm called Clark Hill. So then I picked up and led Clark Hill's cannabis industry group, built its new Denver office. And then, we won a bunch of awards in 2023 for that cannabis industry group in big law, which was, that was real corporatized law. And then I said, I've done it all. I'm out. And that's kind of how it played out. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But along the way, I met people that would come to me with great ideas. Hey, the law allows me to do this. For example, in 2014, when the first farm bill came around, and you talked about hemp, and you talk about Jack. I'm a big fan of Jack. In fact, I was in London just a few weeks ago for work, and where I was at this cannabis industry event, and this guy Robbie, I just posted about this yesterday on LinkedIn. He says, Bob, I met Jack Harrer, X number of years ago. He even signed my book. I go, that's great. I said, I'm really good friends with his son, Dan. And he says, you are? The book is signed by his father. And so I got it with me. So we took a picture together and we called Dan and this and that. It was a walk down memory lane. But those principles got me excited about hemp, maybe 5, 6, 7 years into my cannabis career, because I started to see the opportunity for CBD. Yes, we believed in, all the 50,000 uses of hemp, but CBD, we cracked that open, sued the federal government, and then that became a thing literally overnight.
Well, then let me jump in here for just a minute. I want to put this on videotape. I want to give you a videotape challenge, please, on behalf of Jack. We have someone in the White House who likes to give tariffs and is hell-bent on making certain that everything's made in America. And he did sign the farm bill as well. It would behoove our industry to have someone either from the agricultural department or the White House to jumpstart the hemp industry in this country, because as you know, we can make over 50,000 different products in our own backyard. And in a matter of one growing season, we can be employing half the nation on making hemp plastic, hemp creeks, hemp paper, hemp clothing, hemp whatever. And so you work with 36 different countries. I'm going to ask you to please work with this country and our agricultural department and the people in the White House, and take the other members of all the other states that you're working with, because you said you're in a handful of states, and roll up your sleeve and march into Washington and say, hey, Henry Ford was going to make a car out of this. The first time the word billion was ever used as a cash crop was in 1937 in the Popular Mechanics magazine.
Popular Mechanics, yes, sir.
And here's what we need to do. You want to jumpstart American jobs. You want to create American products. You want to invest in the American people. We can even use hemp as a 3D product for 3D housing to be built. So I'm giving you a challenge on video to go to our White House and our agricultural department and ask them to jumpstart our hemp industry.
Well, Casper, I appreciate all that. And I can tell you this, that what you're asking for is not falling on deaf ears, certainly not with me, but I can tell you for certain it's not falling on deaf ears at the White House. I have been involved in discussions. I'm involved in a trajectory that looks at hemp like the next petroleum. And I don't mean in the way you're thinking. What I mean by petroleum is petroleum became the basis for every single product in the world, from the things we put on our face to keep our skin clean, to the food we eat, to the plastic we drink our drink out of, to the cars we drive. You know, I'm preaching to the choir here. They understand that hemp can be an American-grown commodity that does the exact same thing. That is there. The question becomes, how do they get big business partners to make this go forward? And how do we get past this problem we have right now, which is sort of this esoteric marijuana sector, dispensaries, for lack of a better way to put it. And then you got the hemp sector, all selling the same thing, the cash product, cannabinoids. And cannabinoids are only ingredients, when it boils down to it, in other products. Now, that I don't want to malign the plant or talk about her that way, because the flower is a beautiful thing and we all have a relationship with the flower. But when you take things out of the flower, as industries tend to do, you create cannabinoids, and people want cannabinoids for the feeling and the benefits that come from it.
And there's also the stalk of the plant that can be used for the fibers for the clothing and for the paper that's being made and for all those other aspects as well. So you cannot ignore or forget or overlook the other aspects of this multi-trillion-dollar plant.
Yes, dispensaries are temporary.
So you're taking on
they're an endangered species. Just take, for instance, say, I mean, this is ridiculous to begin with. Say the Drug Enforcement Agency reschedules it to 3. I mean, let's take a bunch of cops and lawyers and have them decide the medical decision for a few 100 million people. It's fucking crazy. But anyway, let's say
wait a minute. I want to jump in one more time, please. Robert, they're doing it in Canada. They're doing it in other countries. In Canada, it is a government-funded crop. It's a huge crop, and they use it for petroleum, and they use it for the CBDs, and they use it for the paper and the fiber. So Canada has been able to demonstrate how the industry can be jump-started and be a very, very vital crop. Go ahead, Al. I'm sorry.
If it goes to Schedule 3, in our United States laws, that means that a prescription still has to be written. It can be written off-label, meaning a doctor or a veterinarian can write it for about anything, but it's got to go to a pharmacist. Dispensaries become absolutely unnecessary and a dead species. Now, the black market will still survive. But anyway, let's go a little international. I want to tell my Belize story. Way ahead of you. Back in I'll call it late 80s, I went to Belize and tried to get the Belizean government to grow hemp. And I was very well received. I spent a week down there. I talked to literally everybody that was head of anything, head of agriculture, the head doctor in the country, everybody. And they all agreed that it would be a good idea for Belize as a good economic agricultural crop and very easy to grow in that environment. They all wanted to do it, but we only do what Great Britain says. And Great Britain has said that cannabis is a bad deal. So even though we know as Belizeans it would be helpful to our country, we can't do it. Thanks for your time. So I'd be interested. That was, say, 1990. That's a long time ago. Has anything changed on that?
Well, I can tell you, I was on a call just last week looking at a draft bill. I hate to say it's taken this long to come back around, but Belize is currently considering a bill that's very simple. We've got friends on the ground down there, and they're in the exact same place. Now, the problem, Al, is that when there's forward-thinking policymakers, maybe it's for an economic reason, maybe it's for social justice, maybe it's for just because philosophically it doesn't make sense to put a plant in a cage. Whatever the reason for it is, sometimes those things just don't cross the finish line. They lose momentum. So that's kind of what I figured out years ago. And that's why I started working internationally, is to try to help provide a little bit of that thrust to get over the finish line, to punch it into the end zone, so to speak. So we've got good friends on the ground in Belize doing things right now. And I'm, what do they call it? My Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl, the tush push, they call it. Push the guys 1 yard forward, get them in the end zone. I'm right behind them trying to do that same thing for those folks on the ground. And I'm pretty optimistic because the whole region has converted. You talk about Costa Rica, you talk about Colombia, you talk about Panama, you talk about so many countries in that region, Mexico, that have legalized the plant in some form or fashion. It's just, to your point, sometimes they don't want to step out of line with whatever country that they're aligned with economically. And those countries, the US, the UK, they don't exactly provide leadership on this issue.
Well, I'm glad Belize, it took them 3.5 decades after my time down there, I guess. But
if you're looking for an approach here on foots on the ground, that reminds me that there seems to be like a place called Los Angeles that needs to rebuild. North Carolina needs to rebuild. Texas, Tennessee needs to rebuild. Some parts of Florida need to rebuild. And, if we're rebuilding with Hemp Creek and we're using hemp woods and we're making hemp plastics for the items that need to go into these hemp houses, our government could quickly rebuild those areas with our own crops and with our own farmers being paid, and our own American workers making our own products in our own backyard.
Before that happens, there's no infrastructure. The infrastructure is not there. That's the problem. To take a raw agricultural crop, it's a plant, folks. To take a raw agricultural plant that's 12, 14 feet high, there's some work that has to be done to make it a usable product. And that takes a specific bunch of machines, very expensive to set up. I have a friend of mine that set one up in North Carolina, running very well, but it cost him $1 million to get going. Not an overwhelming amount of money, but hey, so anyway, of course, Casper's right. I mean, we could greatly reduce the amount of petroleum we use in the world if we shifted over to a natural oil like hemp. Yes, and one thing I'd like Bob to think about in your future talks with your, obviously, a lot of cohorts out there. And I keep harping on this, and someday I'll really get into it on this show. But the nutritional value of cannabis, both for human beings and animals, is extraordinary. With absolutely positive in every friggin' way is cannabis nutritional, both the plant leaves itself and the seeds and the oils, of course, that are produced. So I would say to you, as just as a guy doing this for a long time, that there's a couple of it took me 3 or 4 years to convince the drug policy people back 30 years ago to stop calling it marijuana and start calling it cannabis. Those were the experts that I had to, So we finally got the world to understand cannabis. They still don't understand, the politicians still don't understand in this country that cannabis is a plant. They think it's a drug. Yep. They don't know it's a plant. And so the emphasis that I would put on you is to have your folks, if you would, emphasize plant, think Department of Agriculture rather than Department of Homeland Security, and stress the nutrition of this plant for not only Americans and Canadians. All right, we'll let them have some food, but also the world. I mean, this is good stuff. So anyway, that would be.
And you need to also remind them too that there was a time when people paid their taxes, and hemp is such a valuable crop. So if the people in D.C. want to talk money, honey, we can do that. You had the White House call me, and we'll get this on the road in a week.
I think we're on the right track here, guys. No, Al, to your point, superfood through and through, omega-3s, protein, everything else. Those things are moving forward. It's just right now you need more food grade seeds being produced to lower that price. Right now we all go, I got hemp seeds over here. I put in my yogurt a couple days a week. But that bag cost me $14. That bag should cost $6.99. It doesn't cost $6.99 because there's just not enough material grown in the U.S. to satisfy that need right now. But let me talk for a minute about the infrastructure piece, because you talk about it. I will see your U.S. building material thing, and I'll raise you the Marshall Plan. What the heck do I mean by the Marshall Plan? You remember after the end of the World Wars, they rebuilt Europe. It was called the Marshall Plan. It was how they invested all the countries in the world that were involved in the war, particularly the losing countries, had to advance a bunch of money to rebuild parts of Europe that were destroyed by the world wars. Poland is a great example of that. They actually did use hemp building materials in whole villages in places in Poland. I've been to those villages. It created the oldest, longest standing hemp institute in the world in Poznan, Poland, which I've been to a dozen times and worked with them over the years. Really, really great people. But where I'm going with this is think present day Ukraine. Think future Marshall Plan. When this debacle in Ukraine is over, between Russia and Ukraine, and they need to rebuild whole cities, whole villages. Yeah. To your point, that is what they're going to use. And this isn't me saying this. This was presented at a post-war building plan seminar in Toronto 2 years ago. And believe it or not, Ukraine was one of the largest standing hemp producers in the world for a very long time, still is, but it dropped off, of course, because of the destruction that's happening in that country. Point being is they are going to use hemp to rebuild Ukraine. There's a great Ukrainian by the name of Sergey. He's known as Dr. Hemp House. He builds hemp houses all over the world. Look him up online if you haven't seen him. He's got videos of this. So the infrastructure is not exactly there to support it on a wide scale, but it's in process, and that will be the future. And think about the fact that hemp building materials are flame retardant. These buildings wouldn't burn down in California if they were built with hempcrete type materials. So we're on the same page about that. It's just about getting that information to the right people and not sounding like a quack in doing so. It takes time.
And we can rebuild.
Well, you're talking to three guys here that we've been called quacks for our whole goddamn life. All of a sudden, after 38 years or something, damn, maybe that guy had a point, and it's like, it's friggin' crazy. Let me go to the United Nations and WHO and see if you can enlighten me. As I understand it, a couple of years ago in the summer, the United Nations and WHO both declared that cannabis was really not a bad thing at all and basically descheduled it. And by doing so, a colleague of mine, Mike Kravitz, pointed out to us that according to the UN statutes, which he was very familiar with, the United States government, namely the Attorney General, this is a lawyer question, the Attorney General was required by law to alter our schedule of any drugs so redesigned by those organizations. And of course, this was all done in the right way. So the 1961 single treatment, whatever the hell they call it, that treaty was not violated. Anyway, cannabis became non-regulated by the United Nations, and the Attorney General of the United States, by our U.S. law, was supposed to have altered our schedule. Myself and two other guys actually had a conversation about a year ago with the White House, with their drug advisor. We informed him of this, and he had no idea what we were friggin' talking about. But he took notes and said, well, I got to bring this up then. And 2 weeks later, President Biden said that he was referring this item to the Attorney General. We wrote the Attorney General and said, so what are you doing? What's going on? No reply. Do you know anything about all this?
Yeah, I do. By the way, Michael Kravitz is a good friend and someone I admire greatly. He's really pushed the envelope and has been a major point at the UN for years. Let's talk about that briefly without getting into the weeds. You had the 1960s. You had this sort of this putting cannabis in a box, putting all narcotics, frankly, in a box because of policies that were generated in the 30s. We can go down that road before we all know about Anslinger and how marijuana got vilified and called marijuana, frankly, because it wasn't referred to as marijuana before that. They used that term to make it sound worse than it really was. So at the end of the day, the UN Single Convention, all the nations that signed that, led by the U.S., had to agree to put all of these narcotics in a box, including marijuana, and put it in the highest, most restricted category. So we've been dealing with that for years. And when you're talking about an international body, things don't move quickly. So in 2020, November of 2020, in the midst of COVID, because it was already in the works, the U.S. came out and said it supported two things that were very important. This was major policy change that people don't talk about at the UN. And Michael Kravitz was intimately involved in a lot of this stuff, by the way, to his credit. First of all, they began to recognize medical cannabis for the first time in UN history. They created a new category and recategorized it to recognize medical cannabis. So we're talking about high THC cannabis. But this is the other important part. They recognized that industrial hemp was not subject to United Nations controls and the UN Convention. And they expressly said that even compounds like CBD at the time were not subject to UN controls because they were derived from something that wasn't from UN controls. Now, this is information that you really got to get into the weeds about. A lot of people don't know these things, so it really hasn't made that much of an impact going forward. But those things have changed, and here we are today where the United Nations, they come up in March. In March, there's a hearing in Vienna in front of the UN, the Committee on Narcotic Drugs, and they're going to start to consider the implementation of these things that were adopted years ago. Now, I'm proud to say that I've presented in front of the United Nations on 2 occasions, but I'm also a professor at UNLV right now in their first of its kind Cannabis Policy Institute. So I'm working on a study at UNLV where we're looking at the data of converting the black market, the illicit market, to the commercial market. It didn't work in the US. It didn't work in Canada. Really hasn't worked really anywhere. Yeah. But I work in Morocco right now, the Kingdom of Morocco, and it's working there. And it's the largest cannabis supplier in the world, has been for a very, very long time. That's where it's working. That's what we're studying. So when this study is done, we're going to show that forward-thinking policies of commercialization, which makes some people cringe, but commercialization of the plant does create cultural and social change, gives people a chance to join society and do things legally, and also converts that illicit market over to the commercial market. And I've got a standing invitation to present that finding to the UN because they don't believe it's true. And if that would be a major cornerstone for further UN policy reform going forward. So as you can see, I kind of got myself in the middle of a whole bunch of different things over the last 16 years because I've worked tirelessly and I love this stuff. But those are the things that are happening. And, believe it or not, as much as the Trump administration's, getting a bad name in certain circles, and I come at this thing politically agnostic. I tell you, I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. My values are libertarian, right through and through. But I have to tell you, I see a lot of good things coming out of the White House. There's a lot of bad things coming out of the White House. We have to talk about those things. But the good things are reform of government, and I do think business-friendly cannabis policies that have an impact on the global stage. Everybody waits for the U.S. to move first.
Well, the other thing is he wants to be the biggest in everything and wants America to be the biggest. With this plant, if it's properly spearheaded, we can actually overnight in a growth seasons start to create $1 trillion worth of jobs and products in this country and turn this country into the leading hemp cannabis market on the planet.
Well, it is a crop. Again, I think.
Yeah. Have the White House call.
Give him Casper's number. Bob, we haven't got a whole bunch of time there. I'm watching the clock there for you. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about GPS.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. GPS website is gps.global. Greenbridge Proven Strategies. Greenbridge, meaning we sort of create that bridge between, the historical legacy of cannabis and then bringing it over that bridge into the commercial marketplace. And again, that's really distasteful for a lot of people because they don't like how commercialization of the industry has gone. But that's my activism. That's my contribution as I see it to the world, is to bring something from the dark into the light and ultimately create some rules around it. And that doesn't mean human behavior is going to change. People that grow in their basement are still going to grow in their basement. And by the way, you know what? If you Casper, I won't even ask you where you get your cannabis from, but I bet it's not a dispensary, because people that consume on a regular basis, myself included, don't shop at dispensaries. We still either grow it ourselves or we go to the guy that grows it down the street because he's allowed to grow it under some freedom of self-grow law in a particular state. So it's not apples to apples with the alcohol industry where, for example, if I drink bourbon every week or wine or beer, I go to the liquor store once or twice a week. Regular consumers of cannabis don't shop in the regulated system. So that notion of, well, you commercialize it, you kill everything that's good about it, I don't buy it, because those of us that do it do the same thing we've always done. It just opens up relief. It opens up opportunity. It opens up legal access and jobs for people that really love this plant and want to work around it. And to me, that's a good thing. So that's what we do at GPS, is we help bridge that gap. We help bring government solutions. We say, all right, government, here's what your options are if you want to create legality. But you know what? When you ask a government if it wants to do that, or you pick up on why they want to do that, what's their why? Do they want to create social change, criminal justice reform, medical cannabis? Do they want to just change policy overall? Or do they want to create a new economic sector? You got to figure out their why. And then you got to figure out how to get the operators into that same theory of thinking. And it differs in every jurisdiction around the world. That's what we do.
All right.
Well, and there's the other aspect too. It also cuts back on ruining lives people are sitting behind bars because of these unjust laws against a PLANT. Yep. Hello.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. For you Gen Zers, that was plant. For you Gen Zers, you have to look it up on Wikipedia. Anyway.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being a guest on our big broadcast today, for enlightening us as to what is happening on the front of the cannabis hemp markets. And we do cheer you on and wish you most success at every turn. And I want to wish you a chance to come back in the future and let us know how things are progressing.
I'd be happy to come back, guys. It's really been a pleasure. I feel like I've known y'all for a long time, and we're just sitting around BSing, and I'd love to do it again. So keep me in mind. Please reach out, and hopefully I can give you an update on some other cool international happenstances. And hopefully the next time we can say, and look what the White House did.
Yes.
Yeah, let's hope it's federal. Let's hope it's federal. The example of a crazy situation in the news the other day was a fellow from British Columbia. He was bringing in cannabis equipment, like processing equipment for cannabis, and the border basically apprehended the guy and told him that he's no longer allowed back in the U.S.
Yep, and you just let number 47 know that call me. And we'll figure it out. Seriously. All right. And Al Byrne, you've also got a book that you've done too, right?
Yes. And I would recommend, Bob, that you think about writing a book. Mine is right there on the screen. It's about a year old now, for country and cannabis. And basically, I think that says what it's about. It's a history of me and being in the military for 24 years, and that interface while in the military with cannabis, and then my advocacy or educational effort, I'd like to say, after that, from joining up with Normal in the mid-'80s, running Normal, stopping patients at a time, really opening up the conversation of medical cannabis in the United States, the world, now to the UN, just as Jack and Casper did for hemp. We were all cohorts doing our different little thing at the same time. And I'll point out to the defense attorneys, back in that day, it's a long story, but we Normal went three ways at my direction. It went legal, stayed legal. It went to hemp, it went to medicine. And we explained to the lawyers that wanted the legal part of it to be a bigger deal than anything else, that, you know, it wasn't working. and here we are 35 years later now. Hemp is the real thing. We're talking about it. It's going to get bigger and better, and that's good. Medical cannabis is here to stay, not going anywhere, getting more and more developed, as it should be. And we still haven't legalized it. So it could be, again, that defense attorney idea has had its time, and maybe we should shift the idea of how to legalize it into a more logical format. And one of the problems you're going to have, I think, we talked about this last week with a previous author, James. He said something interesting. He said, let's say we just legalize this stuff. He said, what are you going to do with all the people you just put out of work? All those law enforcement people? Well, we can shift them around. Yeah. But what about the dealers and the guys that are smuggling and the guys that are doing all the backup? What are you going to do with them all? There's millions of them. And essentially, it's a good question, because there are millions of people involved in this black market. It works rather well, as we know. We just all saying, yeah, it works good. But some of them will go away, but a lot of them will have to find other occupations. And the government's going to have to do that. And it could be that hemp's the answer. Try and get these people into that type of a network. But it's a question that needs to be looked at by politicians. I'm sure they are, if they're thinking, because we want regulation, and we want legalization, and we want individual use. That's what we all want. We want to be able to grow cannabis in our backyard, just like I can grow my beans and my beets. So,
well, add that to the challenge, Bob, as you go to Washington. I'm serious. You know, start on our home front. You know, America first. We want to make American hemp great again. We want to we want to make American hemp great again. Now, Graham, I know you got a Canadian hemp that's great. You want to let people know what you're doing there about Pace Radio?
Oh, yeah, Pace Radio. Yeah, we're doing broadcasting on cannabis as well as psychedelics. Every day of the week, we've got a broadcast going out, whether it's Monday or Sunday or Saturday. There's I think we got 8 broadcasts on the network alone, and it's all patient driven. We're all patient advocates, and all out there spreading the information about medical cannabis.
And by the way, we're all volunteers, and we're not asking for anything. We're going to do this no matter what the hell goes down. But if you want to send Pace Radio $100, you want to send Casper $100, you know, it'd help. You know, I mean, we don't want anything, but if you want to do something useful, there's a couple of ideas.
Because we are changing the way we're broadcasting. We're using AI now. We're bringing the dead back to life with animated programming, and
come a long way since the radio days.
Yeah, Bob, by the way, is live. It's really him.
Yeah.
Yes, tonight it is, but I have a large archive.
Yeah. I'm keeping the watch on the time here for Bob. Bob's got something he's got to deal with here, guys. So,
all right, we'll let you go.
That time.
So, well, let me wrap it up then and say thank you out there for tuning in and listening to all of us talk about how important it is to take time for hemp.
I want Bob to tell us where everybody can find his website.
Easy to find, guys. BobHoban.com. GPS.global. My pleasure, guys. I love doing this. I'd love to do it again. Keep up the great work. Keep up the great message. And Al, I'm picking up your book one way or the other before the end of this week.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All righty. Go ahead, Casper. Do your spiel.
It is important everybody out there, the whole world, know how important it is to take time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, time for help! Yeah.
I think we've all been misled. I think we've all been misled. I think we've all been misled. And, you know, I've apologized for my own role in misleading people as well. It has medical value, and that's part of the reason I changed my own mind on this.
Letter to the president. Letter to the president. Letter to the president. Letter to the president. Me send a letter to the residents of the president. A stamp on the front saying very urgent. The message inside went something like legalize it. Sensimilla. Sensimilla is a herb that grows naturally, just like any other plant or tree. Natural as the birds, natural as the bees, and just like them sensia to be free to be grown anywhere that we please, in the city, in the town, in the country, in the hills and in the valley. Sensi should be there for everyone to see. Me send a letter to the residents of the president. A stamp on the front saying very urgent. The message inside went something like legalize it. Sensimilla to call sensi a drug is very absurd. It should be known as a natural herb. So much diseases sensi has cured. That's why doctors use it all around the world for glaucoma and fever, rheumatism, arthritis and asthma, insomnia, emphysema, and to block epileptic seizure, to alleviate the pain and nausea associated with the AIDS and cancer. Some say it is the best stress reliever. Lord knows I'm a believer, so give me ganja cookie, me herbal tea. Sensimilla is I don't care what no government say. Sensimilla is okay. Ganja cookie and me herbal tea. Sensimilla is I don't care what no government say. Sensimilla is Lord, we want legalization, decriminalization and emancipation for all those sentenced to incarceration for participation with the healing of the nation. It's just another case of political insanity, abusing the rights of humanity. But we should plant a seed of the sweet that we need to avoid an ecological calamity. We can use it for paper to save some trees, use it for fuel to save some seas, use it for medicine to help fight disease, and use it for food when we're hungry. So give me ganja cookie, me herbal tea. Sensimilla is I don't care what no government say. Sensimilla is okay. Ganja cookie and me herbal tea. Sensimilla is I don't care what no government say. Sensimilla is okay.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network.
Time for Hemp is a Pace Radio Network content provider.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.